just to give a brief introduction to our listener and viewer, Justin Rowe, he runs a very successful B2B LinkedIn ads agency called Impactable. You guys are probably the biggest in North America, and about 40% of the revenue that you generate comes off of your personal brand on LinkedIn, which is absolutely massive. So, Justin, thank you for being here.
I'm happy to be here, and yeah, we've been connected for a little bit on LinkedIn, and happy to jump on here, meet you in person, and have this session.
Awesome. Love that. Justin, now to give a bit of background to whoever's watching or listening to this, before you went into this whole agency world and you became a founder, it's really interesting that you were in the restaurant industry, right? How did you get into that, and how did you make a shift from the restaurant industry into B2B LinkedIn ads? Please walk us through it.
Yeah, so the short version of the story is I was a restaurant operator, really trying to figure out what else was out there, what other opportunities there might be for me. So this was maybe 6-7 years ago now, maybe six. I discovered LinkedIn, and I was kind of like doing all the things that you might do if you're looking for open to a new career or job. So I updated my resume. I went to LinkedIn, which I kind of viewed as just like a digital resume, kind of like some of those other sites. Updated my LinkedIn profile, kind of poking around, and I kind of saw like the feed, and it was kind of like there was other people. I had there in my feed there was like other, well, not other because I wasn't a founder at that point. There was B2B startup founders, there was marketers, there was like kind of these cool people that were like actually posting content that was like different stuff out there. I even saw like restaurant stuff, which is really relevant to me. I was connected to like leadership in my restaurant, like franchise and corporate. And so I was kind of consuming that. And I realized that LinkedIn was, more than just an online resume. And so I started taking a more active approach to try to find opportunity for myself. And the steps I took was I updated my LinkedIn profile. I started actually actively sending connection requests to people that I thought might have opportunity for me. So at that time, it was like district managers, company owners, HR managers, recruiters in my space, just growing my network in a targeted way and introducing myself to some of those people. And I started posting content around that time. I said, what can I do to open up opportunities for myself? I can connect with people that might have opportunities, and I can maybe start posting about my journey and my experience to position myself as someone that, they might actually want to be in those positions. And so I started doing that. And crazy enough, like I got a ton of people reaching out about like opportunities for restaurant positions, leadership positions. And I started that was probably like 4 months in of sending connection requests and posting content consistently. I started getting legitimate opportunities, and they started compounding. And then pretty soon I started getting a different type of person reaching out. I had 3 or 4 different investors reach out to me and say, hey, I'm going to build a restaurant franchise and I'm looking for a partner, someone who will run the business. They'll put up the money. They want someone to do, the actual operation side. And so something clicked in my mind, and I realized like I had unintentionally made myself a visible restaurant operator on LinkedIn in my city, and it was attracting all sorts of opportunities. And that's where the seed kind of was planted in me, saying, hey, this platform is really powerful, not just for job opportunities, but for something bigger. Like people are using this I just got connected with investors. So I actually took up I met with these different people. I heard their crazy ideas. One of them was pretty legit. He wanted to open up a Potbelly sandwich shop franchise. He put up all the money. I do the grand opening, manage the team, and I actually took the dive. I decided to be his operating partner. We launched a sandwich shop in Fort Wayne, Indiana, and then a year later, I convinced him to buy 3 more stores that were already in existence in Louisville. I positioned myself to scoop up, a small percentage of ownership for running it. And that was my first foray into leveraging LinkedIn for something of real value, realizing its potential. And then I actually also then got a ton of it was 80% of the business was done by 2 p.m. So I have afternoons and evenings and weekends to start thinking about how I could maybe monetize, what I've learned with LinkedIn and help other people use it, which was how I kind of got started with LinkedIn as
Love
a
that.
startup.
But this, while you were going through all of this, you were mainly, whatever you were doing, this was all through organic content, correct?
Correct. At first, it was organic connection request and
Mm.
posting that got me that original, those original opportunities. That was all organic. And then
Oh,
I did start at that point after I transitioned into the restaurant ownership as a side hustle. I took to LinkedIn organic and I took to Upwork as a freelance site to
oh,
try to see how I could be useful to other people, help them leverage LinkedIn. And that was like how I initially got some of those initial first clients for LinkedIn services.
interesting. What I want to know now is, while you were going through this transition of, like the world is vast and I think there are more opportunities for me out there, as a person, right, on a human level, how did that make you feel? Because now suddenly you were open to a world that you probably thought that did not exist before.
I guess the on a human level, the thoughts that are going through my mind was, I'm working in this restaurant. I feel like I'm able to do more. I don't know what I don't know. I don't know what other opportunities are out there. So my natural first inclination was, can I use, LinkedIn to get me to to further my career in this industry I'm already in. So at first I wasn't thinking like I was trying to get into a different industry. So
Yeah.
I used it to try to see, could I get a better offer at a different restaurant? Could I move into a higher tier of restaurant that has higher pay or a more established restaurant? It didn't cross my mind of possibly being a restaurant owner. So when that came around and I actually got into a position where I was a part owner of a restaurant franchise, like I think that shifted my mindset of what's possible. And then, yeah, I had the idea then to say, okay, that was like life changing for me.
Mm.
And if I could maybe, the entrepreneurial side of me started spinning and saying, if I could help connect other people, either just job seekers with opportunity or businesses with investors, like if I could use what I've learned to connect other people to opportunity, that could really be something. And then that was when it was like, it turned into a LinkedIn lead generation agency, but that was like the
Mm.
idea. But yeah, for me, I was like, I feel, I mean, I guess a lot of people feel this, like, I must be meant for something more than what I have today, and I know I'm capable of more if someone would give me a chance. But how do I find opportunity? How do I position myself? And LinkedIn kind of became that platform of like putting myself out there and trying to see what I could attract or what I could build. And but yeah, those are the
Wow.
feelings I had.
That is absolutely crazy. And now, if I'm not wrong, you guys now at Impactable have about what, 190, 200 clients?
Yeah, around 200 clients, and we're about 80 staff for ourselves with an office in San Antonio and an office in uh, Ukraine, and we have about 80
Wow.
80 people altogether.
Isn't it absolutely crazy to think that it all started with the restaurant industry and then leveraging your personal brand, you built this whole operation? How does that make you feel?
Um, I'm not a super sentimental kind of person, so I feel
Hmm.
like I probably don't do a good enough job of like stopping and saying, "Dang, this is like crazy what I built." At each level, I think I maybe stop and pause for a little bit, but then the way my mind works is kind of like, okay, this is where I'm at now. So now new
What's
opportunities
next?
have opened up, and what is, yeah, and what's next. But my wife does a good job of kind of grounding me and saying like, hey, we were in this apartment and we were living on this and this, we were
Yeah.
driving this, and now, look where we're at. And it's more of like not just where we're at, what we have, but we're in a good school district. We have opportunities that we didn't have before. We have a different kind of lifestyle. And so to me, I think the biggest thing that has an impact on me is I have the freedom in my life and flexibility to
Yeah.
spend time with my family, to be there for my kids. And I have kind of skills beyond, the restaurant industry. I have skills that I believe, even if this company crumbled and went into the ocean
Yeah.
tomorrow, I have real skills that could land me a decent job out in the
Yeah.
market. And so I'm really happy to have that because I feel like that gives me a sense of security, for
Like a
what's
safety
next.
net.
Yeah. I would tell my wife, like, if this thing crumbled, like, I could probably get a decent job as like a in-house marketer for like a, funded startup or something, or a seed startup. Like they need a VP of marketing or something. Like I
Yeah.
could probably snag something decent.
I'm sure you can. Now, if we, now I want to talk a bit about impactable, right? Because I want to show other founders who are on the platform that they could do more than just announce that, hey, I've got a promotion, I've got a new job, for example, stuff like that. But for founders, this is a whole new playing field, right? Now
Yeah.
for impactable, just how big of an impact do you think your personal brand has have had? And in terms of content in the beginning, did you had to figure out like a lot of things, or do you feel like you just hit the ground running?
I feel like I just hit the ground running, and I was one of those. I'm the kind of person that I'm not an extrovert, so I am an
Mm,
introvert, but I'm also the kind of person that's like I feel a large sense of duty. So if there's something I can do, even if it makes me uncomfortable, that will help further, my position or my company or my family, like I'll do it. So even though I don't want to be necessarily out front and active on LinkedIn or sending connection requests or sending messages, like I do that because I saw the power of it, and it was hard for me to ignore how powerful that was. So then once I started like Lincoln Learn, that then got
yeah,
acquired and became Impactable, I realized the power of personal branding, like because that's how I got interviews for restaurant and how I got the investor. So when I started, my agency journey, I knew I couldn't like walk away from that. So I kind of doubled down, and I just really tried to see what worked. And over time, I kind
yeah,
of realized like just sharing your journey, sharing the good, the bad, being human. I learned like being, relatable really helped. And of all the other platforms, being popular on LinkedIn, I think is easier to monetize
yeah,
than other platforms, because it's not just being popular. If you are the visible expert in your space for even a small group of connections, or what I discovered way back then was even if you could dominate a small city on
mm,
LinkedIn in a specific industry, something so small and actually easy to obtain, massive opportunities could come. So that was one of the guiding principles. Like, I don't need to come, if you're a founder and you're listening, like, you don't need to come to LinkedIn and think of it as some ocean where, like, how can someone little like you compete? It's actually a series of ponds. The 1,000, 2,000 people that you're connected to, most of those relevant decision makers that you might actually want to work with have less than 500 connections. And if you post twice a week,
mm,
chances are you're dominating their feeds. So I know you look at your feed and you're like, oh, there's an influencer, there's an influencer. I can't compete with them. Chances are the connections you have that you actually want to work with aren't connected to the same people. So you're not competing with those people. You're competing
yeah.
with yourself. Can you saturate that group? Can you expand your audience in a targeted way? And can you position yourself as the go to expert for your connections? And untold opportunities can come out of that mindset. And I think it's a lot easier to chew than boiling the whole ocean.
Wow, I absolutely love that. And I've been talking to a lot of founders, right, Justin? And most of them mention like, hey, we created content for 2 months, 3 months, and we don't see any ROI. And I think we would rather spend that time running the business itself than on LinkedIn. What do you have to say about that?
I can understand that. It's very
Yeah,
much like SEO. Like, say you take 2 or 3 months and you're writing consistent articles, and you're writing, like, I imagine, like, if that's you stop and you measure like what you've done and the results you've gotten so far. Even after 3 4 months of like SEO, you might like weigh the cost and time and revenue and say,
yeah,
this isn't worth it. But I think the mistake is not seeing it as something that builds momentum over time, because after 3 months, you're not at a place where you can see an ROI, but you're further than you were. And if you keep going, you'd be further, in 3 more months. And I would say it was like 4 to 6 months of like showing up almost daily, maybe 3 4 5 months of showing up daily, where I started seeing like tangible,
mm,
consistent, like results. And then the best thing was, I really do compare it to SEO. It builds momentum over time. So as I was continuing to saturate my small community, my community was slowly growing. I was learning and better able to position myself. So I would say you need to pick something that's sustainable,
yeah.
and instead of quitting completely, maybe reduce the amount of posts that you're doing. And then the one thing I would say that was kind of life changing is the mindset of, it's not just posting, because honestly, posting is like almost secondary to what would be most impactful for founders starting off.
Mm,
It's engaging in the world around you on LinkedIn. So yes, you could
interesting.
make a post, but if I had to choose between what's more impactful, making a nice post or spending an hour, or 30 minutes engaging in the feed around me with other relevant people, treating it almost like a networking event, that has way bigger impacts. And even just making a strategic comment on someone else who's more popular's post can give you
Yeah.
more visibility than probably your most popular post. So keeping that in mind and trying to leverage that is one of the things that can really help move the needle on getting results from LinkedIn.
Yeah, that makes so much sense. And I've seen your content, right? You're super consistent. And by consistency, I think a lot of people feel like, oh, we have to post every single day of every single week. And I think that is a lot of pressure and it's almost paralyzing, right? But for
Yeah.
you, I think there's a very nice balance. And the kind of content that you put out, I think it mainly circles around two things. Number one, obviously you teach people the most common pain points, how to solve them, what mistakes they're making. You give them solutions. The other thing is you have very strong thought leadership, right? So how do you make sure that you create content that hits these two core areas, and where do you come up with the ideas from, right? Like how do you congest everything and just put out there?
So one of the things I learned early on, even from when I was like a restaurant operator, is the type of content that seems to work best and move the
Hmm.
needle on like making money from it is kind of like documenting your journey. And if you're documenting your journey, you'll almost never run out of content, because it's one thing to be like, okay, I'm not building anything, I'm not learning anything, I'm not doing anything new, and I need to sit here and
Hmm.
constantly think of new and creative content. Like you will bang your head against the wall because that's really hard. But if you
Yeah.
focus internally first and you say, okay, how can I grow myself? How can I improve myself? How can I learn? What can I test? If you focus on yourself and your development as one of your core principles, you'll almost never run out of content because you're learning something, you're testing something, you're improving yourself. And then you write about that. Like, what are the flaws, the terrible human condition flaws that I'm trying to overcome? Chances are half of your network has the same issue. If there's something in your business that's, an ugly spot, you're challenging, it's challenging you and you're looking for creative solutions, post about it, post about, what you tried and how it failed, post again. And I think the balance that gets you the most credibility is don't just show the highlight reels, show I identified this problem, I tested this, it failed miserably, did not solve the problem. That gives you credibility, because then when you do another one and you come out and you have some amazing result from it, people aren't
Yeah.
just going to see you as some highlight reel. They're going to see you as an authentic founder sharing their fails and wins, and it's going to give you a lot more trust and credibility. So I would say documentation versus just creation is one way. And then the other thing that I've really latched onto, I
Hmm.
call it like give the whole damn playbook away, is like
Yeah.
literally if you create content and the goal is like, can I create content that just shows people to do exactly the things that they pay me to do, that makes amazing content. And you almost like won't run out of it, because like it's beneficial to document it anyway, like for internal training, for like lead magnets, like, and you could think of like, if I was creating a course on how to do exactly what I would do, how would I break it up into sections? How would I segment it? What would be the things involved? And you could essentially just have like, yeah, 3 or 4 months worth of content. And at the end,
Yeah.
you wouldn't just have, I think that's the other thing I really latched onto. If you're just thinking about creating 100 pieces of separate random content, that's going to be really hard. If you say, I'm
Yeah.
going to create something big that happens to have 100 pieces connected to it, it'll fuel 4 months worth of content, and you'll have something complete and packaged at the end. You'll say, at the end of this, not only will I have 4 months worth of content, I have a LinkedIn ads course that I could either give away for free, package, bundle, sell, like, but I have something
Like a
tangible
like a
from it.
complete playbook, right?
Yeah,
and
exactly.
and this is again, this was very interesting that you brought it up, because I mean, in my conversations with these founders who want to or interested in LinkedIn content, they say like, well, we post for a few months, but we really don't know why we are posting or what we're posting, that we can't tie
Yeah.
them, right? There's no end goal, and that's why we end up putting the plug. So the fact that you mentioned that it's important to have something in mind, I think that is absolutely critical. And speaking of that, when you started out, right, in the beginning, and you knew that you know what, I'm going to do it for the business, was that always the end goal, or was like getting inbound leads or getting more awareness for the business like more like a byproduct?
At at first, when I was on the restaurant side, like I honestly didn't know what could possibly come from
Hmm.
it. I felt like there was opportunity here. I felt like it was untapped. I saw some other success stories, so I was trying to just test the waters. But there was a point where I kind of became convinced, like this daily and weekly input, this struggle, like is worth the result, because I do see people coming inbound and reaching out. And it would be, and I started connecting the dots, and I would say, when I make this kind of post, it goes viral, but I don't get anyone actually reaching out about,
Yeah.
something I can monetize. And then I have other posts, 800 people saw it, but I got 2 people that reached out and said, hey, that's crazy. Do you think that would work for us? And it starts a
Mm.
conversation. And so I mentally noted that, and I made a shift away from what was popular. Because believe it or not, I used to be a lot more viral. I used to have posts that had like millions of views. Now I don't
Yeah.
really go viral, but I do get consistent inbound. And it was like tactical, practical value posts that are like, here's exactly what we do for ourselves. And I think so then I started connecting it, and then it became like, now at this point, it's so connected to the point where it's like, if I went 3 weeks without posting, I would have a noticeable dip in like inbound leads. Our sales
Mm.
team would be yelling at me. We would be like, having less cash flow. And so I do connect it almost like an SDR, BDR kind of thing. Like, I have a set amount of tasks. I have engagement I need to do. I have posts, but
Yeah.
I try to do it in a way that like is still fun and energizing for me, and not something I just like do. And that can be a struggle. Like when you're at the level I'm at, where you're posting, every day,
Yeah.
and I'm trying to make like, an hour a day of engaging on the feed in order to, and with, the people that are responding
Yeah.
to my posts, can feel like a part-time job. And on top of running an agency and having a family, like, that can feel like a lot. So trying to balance and get support for that. But my best advice for that would be pick something you could be consistent about. So instead of dropping off,
Yeah.
reduce your consistency, reduce the workload. Don't just dial it back to zero. Like, find something that is sustainable.
Yeah.
And I guess the addiction would be like, if you can finally connect the right type of content that gets you some inbound leads, and you can create some consistency and predictability around it, like, then it'll be hard for you to walk away. But if you never get to that point of seeing anything
Yeah.
from it, yeah, I guess you could, give up early before you see that, but maybe you just don't have the right motions in play.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And a lot of the times people have this misconception that being consistent means posting 5 or 7 times a week, which is, in my opinion
Yeah.
and my experience, it's wrong, right? Consistency is, even if you show up once or twice in terms of content, let's say a week, I think that's more than enough. As long as your content is valuable, has enough depth, and actually teaches somebody something, I think that matters the most. The one thing that I want to ask you, I think it's a lighthearted question actually, Justin, is, do you ever think of quitting and be like, you know what, I just don't want to do this anymore?
Um, I definitely, it's not something, so I'll say this. I didn't
No.
set out to become an entrepreneur originally. I chose this path out of necessity. As I told you before we started recording,
Yeah.
I didn't LLC the original startup until after my first son was born. But I had the motivation to push into it because we had a baby on the way, and out of necessity, I didn't feel like I was making enough. I didn't feel like I was providing everything I could for my family. So I pushed into entrepreneurship in order to solve that problem. If I was working for a job that paid me well, valued me, and I had a good life, like, I might not have, taken that path. And so I would say now I'm here, I'm still in the leadership position. I
Yeah.
have this competitive drive to build something big. And so that helps drive me. But yeah, if you're asking if there's days where if someone said, I could pay you this salary, these are the benefits, here's your working
Mm.
conditions, you got a nice brand, here's at your disposal. I mean, that sounds very attractive. A 9 to 5, or a 7 to 3 or something sounds very attractive to me.
Yeah.
If it was something like I could disconnect from and be like, okay, I'm going to give you, 40 hours a week, or 40, 50 hours a week. That's what you get. I
Yeah.
can disconnect. I can take vacation. Like, yeah, that sounds pretty
That
attractive to
sounds,
me sometimes.
yeah, sounds very appealing. And on the flip side, how much would you say your personal brand, in terms of marketing, right? In traditional marketing, how much do you think your personal brand potentially saves you every single year, as if you were to do it in a traditional way?
Yeah, so I would say, as a rough estimate, because we do run paid ads as
Paid
well,
ads.
and I've
Yeah.
kind of like run those variables and say, like, what is the supplement that I'm getting from organic? If I dropped more organic, how much would we have to
Mm.
spend in order to make up for that? And I would say probably my organic, a conservative estimate, I think, would be that I'd have to spend about $10,000 to $15,000 a month in paid ads to get the
Month.
same traction that I'm getting organically. So probably about $180,000 of annual marketing spend to get what I'm doing organically.
That is so crazy. And I think a lot of founders, if anybody's listening to this or watching, I think this is such an important factor to take in mind, right? Because that is a lot of money. And what you have what you have right now, Justin, it's not because you posted for 3 months and now you're saving a shit ton of money. It's because
Yeah,
you've been at it for a long time, being consistent, and you believe that it's going to work out, right? And now eventually
yeah.
the payout is so big that it just makes it worth it, doesn't it?
Yeah. And yeah, there's a lot of things like I can't even track, like the podcast spots I get on, the guest interview spots, like
Yeah.
that third party validation, like whether I post it on my feed or not, like because of my organic presence, it gets me those opportunities that then get me, even more opportunities. And yeah, it's hard to put a price tag on it.
Yeah.
Because even I guess like even the content and organic presence I have, I've paired into paid ads. So they start to really blend together. Like I'm using organic content amplified by LinkedIn ads and thought leader ads in order
Yeah.
to like just amplify. And I kind of did it intentionally. Like I did at one point dial back my organic daily effort, for my own mental sanity and for
Yeah.
running the agency, and increase the amount of paid ad spend to offset that. But yeah, it is like a mental decision to say, if I drop my organic presence and effort, I would have to increase our ad budget by five
Yeah.
or $10,000, like at least to
Wow.
offset this little drop, or 15,000 to offset it all. So it's definitely a valuable input. But it wasn't worth $15,000 a month of ad spend early on.
Yeah.
It grew in value, and now at 80,000 followers, this is where we're at. Maybe it's even worth more ad spend than that now, and it's going to continue to grow, I imagine.
Yeah, 100%. Do you think, like you mentioned the follower thing, right? You mentioned at the beginning that even if you don't have a massive following or a huge connection like pipeline or whatever, do you think you'd still have this much of an effect if your followers weren't 80,000, but you had like 20,000, but like very targeted?
Yeah, and I would say the reason I'm confident to say that is I've gone through phases where I built up 20 or 30,000 followers, and then I took a pretty long hiatus from LinkedIn. And when I
Mm,
came back, I felt like I was essentially starting over. So the way the LinkedIn
okay.
works, like if you take a really long break, when you come back and you make a post, LinkedIn doesn't think automatically that that post is relevant to all those people that were seeing and engaging with your content before. So you
In the
kind of
first
have to
place.
like ignite that in a new group. And even though on paper you have 30,000 followers, when you start being active again, it's almost like the same traction as someone with 5,000 followers. So I do think like
Mm,
if you're building it right, if you build a targeted connection, you're posting relevant, and you stay consistent, and again, like consistent to what you can sustain,
yeah.
you can definitely get similar traction. I think out of 15, 20, 30,000 followers. And I've seen some like smaller startups with small followings really
Yeah.
have like a super engaged group that they're, I'm sure, getting a lot of value and inbound leads from. And me at 80,000, like, yeah, I imagine like chunks of that are probably less active because of it's
Yeah.
been 6 years and I've gone through cycles. So there's people with half as many followers that have a more engaged following than me because of the way I've kind of done it over the years.
Love that. And I think that makes a lot of sense. And a lot of times, the founders that I've worked with in the past, they say, like, hey, it's been 3, 4 months. Why haven't got X thousand amount of followers? We don't think it's working. But I think there needs to be some sort of education and awareness. And hopefully, through something like what we're doing right now, it's not the follower count that matters. The quality matters more as opposed to the quantity.
Yeah.
And I think you saying this from somebody who's actively doing this is going to matter a lot. So, really appreciate that. And yeah, I mean, this has been amazing so far. Justin, now, I mentioned earlier before we start recording that I've got a rapid fire round where you only have to answer in 1 or 2 sentences. And yeah, it's going to be 8 questions. Are you ready?
I'm ready. Let's do it.
Awesome. Let's do it. Let me just bring it up. Perfect. Let's begin. The first one. What is the worst advice you've ever received as a founder?
Just show up and give value, or just be consistent. I think without context, it can just lead to burnout and confusion. So it needs a lot more nuance than that.
Love that. What is the one thing founders complain about that you secretly think is overhyped?
I don't know if I have a good one for that.
We
Maybe
can
we'll come
skip it
back
if
to
you
that one.
want. Yeah,
Yeah,
sure.
skip for now.
Awesome. So, what is the biggest fake it till you make it moment you've experienced as a founder?
Probably early on,
Hmm.
when before I had any kind of identifiable service, I just said yes and then figured it out. And so early on, I was doing anything from social media management to ghostwriting to publishing on other platforms, and just I was Googling, literally Googling, how do I do this? After I'd already told a client, I would definitely do that for them, and figuring it out and doing it.
Awesome. Well, we're glad that it worked out. The next one is if you weren't in the restaurant industry or the B2B ads landscape, what career would you have?
I really did fall in love with marketing, so I feel like I would try to do something with marketing, whether it's in B2B or not. It really taps into my creative side, and my analytical side, so probably marketing. If not, I'd be trying to be a professional poker player, tournament,
Oh,
Texas Hold'em.
wow. Awesome. I would love to get into more into that, but maybe some other day.
I
Okay. If you could switch places with any founder for a day, who would it be and why?
guess I have some decent ones in my network that are just really curious, like
Hmm.
what their day to day looks like, and they're in similar space. But I guess if it used to be, I'd want to switch places with like Gary V. He's less popular
Oh, wow.
now, but just really seeing like what the inside of the operation looks like. I'd also love to see the inside of and inner workings of like a big company like SoftServe, who has like a
Hmm.
staff aug fractional team model that I think is what we're building towards. So something like that.
Awesome. Love that answer. What is the one thing you miss about not being a founder?
Um, I guess just like utter and complete control. There
Hmm.
are occasions where I basically tasked with pushing forward in a direction that I don't necessarily 100% have a vision on or share complete alignment. So
Hmm.
there are, some instances where I am asked to push forward on something that I don't have complete clarity on. Whereas as a founder, like I felt like I had complete control to push in whatever direction I wanted without any output. But yeah, I would say that's the main one. But I actually would gladly give up that for the structure and security that I have in the current position.
Love that. All right. So now this is the last one. What do you think is the biggest sacrifice that you've had to make as a founder so far?
Um, Time and accountability, as far as it is not a normal job. It's not something you can
Hmm.
disconnect from, either from your time or mentally. I feel like my mental capacity is constantly on this machine. How to grow it, how to improve it, how to painfully aware of all the flaws. It takes
Yeah.
up so much mental space. I feel like that's probably that level of mental space, but it's it's possible that I just have an obsessive personality, and maybe I'd be obsessing about something else, even if it was a 9 to 5 like corporate job. Like maybe I'd be just as obsessive, or tournament
Yeah.
poker. But I think that level of time investment and mental capacity, just overwhelming obsession, is probably one of them.
Just just a small follow up. Do you think that you do it, you feel like it's a sacrifice, but at the end of the day you feel like you enjoy it?
I think it's give and take, because my wife would go through phases where she's saying something like, and I'd have to really stop and think about it, like
Okay.
you enjoy this, and you just want to do this, you want to be spending your time, like I might have to stay up or do invest this time, and she was making it sound like it was something like fun and enjoyable that I'm doing, and I didn't feel that way in the moment,
Hmm.
because not all the work is fun and enjoyable. But then, yeah, at the end of the week or the end of the month or after a quarter, if I step back and I say, it's a luxury to be able to have those problems or those issues that I'm
Yeah.
investing and working through. So I do think it is a labor of love, and it is a sacrifice of time. But then, yeah, of course, I'm happy to do it, and I feel blessed to be in a position to have this opportunity, and
Absolutely.
I willingly make those sacrifices in order to. I feel like I'm humble and aware enough to know that this isn't all me. I was right place, right time. I'm trying to make the best of the opportunity I have. So I do
Yeah.
feel like kind of blessed to have those problems, and I take them pretty willingly, because I do feel happy to be here.
Yeah, I've got no doubts actually. I think you're going to do even incredible things, whether it's with Impactable or whether it's maybe something else in the future. But yeah, I think you've done amazing so far. Thank you, by the way, for doing this. I think it's been a great episode, you could say, and there's a lot that people could learn from here, not just from an expertise point of view, like hey, how to leverage LinkedIn or this or that, but as a founder as well. I think a lot of people are going to relate to you, which is something that I want to achieve out of this. So yeah, thank you so much, Justin, for being here.
I appreciate it. Thanks for having me.